Hey, hi everyone. Welcome back. So guys, as part of this session, I'm going to talk about a brief overview on a data types with the simple examples. So the first and a foremost thing that you need to know here is what is a data type? In a simple terms, we can say that the data type represents what type of a value that need to be stored in a variable. See, in the previous sessions, we studied about a variable, but for a variable, what type of data that you are storing, whether it is a group of characters that you are storing, whether it is a number that you are storing, whether it is a true or false that you are storing, all that information you need to specify with this particular data types itself. So here I'm defining third script.js. Okay, I was just defining my third script.js as to demonstrate this particular data types. So let me add a comment here in the starting so that I will be defining that. So data type. Okay, so data type represents, okay, represents the type of a data that can be stored inside a variable. Of course, my copilot gave me that suggestion and I accepted it. Perfectly all right. So this is a data type. Here, the various types of data types that we can use are basically, it was broadly categorized into two types. One is a primitive data type and the second one is a reference data type or a non-primitive data type. We can say that in a simple terms, the primitive data type, one value at a time, we can store it as part of a primitive data type. And as part of a reference data type, so we can store multiple values at a time. Okay, so the significance of an object, a array, and a function that we will be studying moving further. But as part of this session, let us study about a primitive data types. See, the primitive data types means we can store only one value at a time. Like I just want to define a number, I just want to define a string, all those things. So let's get started. So the first one here is a string. So the string is represents the group of characters. Okay, the group of characters that needs to be stored, whether it's gonna be in a single quote. Okay, whether you can store it in a single quote or we can also store it in a double quote also. Okay, the strings can be stored in a single quote or in a double quote. So one thing here is, we just need to define whether both in a, before starting the string and after the string also, you just need to put it like that. Say string Surendra. This is a string. You just need to define. Or Surendra, you just need to define. So it shouldn't be like a single quote Surendra and with a double quote. Ideally, as part of the best practice, right, we will be defining everything in a double quotes itself. Okay, perfect. The next one is a number. So ideally, we will be defining whether an integer number or a floating number as part of a number. Okay, an integer number or a floating number as part of this particular number, guys. Okay, an integer, like an example is a 3, 4, something like that, or a 3.4, 5.4, something, whichever it might be, we can still have this a number as a data type itself. And the next one is a Boolean. So Boolean is the one which represents only the two values, whether it is a true or a false, would be defined inside this particular Boolean. Okay, and the next one is a null basically. So the null itself is it denotes a null value. Okay, the absence of any value into that. Okay, denotes a null value into a variable. Okay, and the next one here is undefined. Okay, so let me change it. So undefined. So my copilot is giving me a suggestion. Let's accept it. So the undefined means that has been declared but not yet assigned any value. So you declared a variable but you haven't assigned any valuable value for that. In such situations, you will be using this particular, okay, you will be using this particular, by default it's coming it as in undefined. So let us see a simple example for that. So in the previous session we discussed about a variables. So variable employee name is equal to employee name itself is a name which is a group of characters, hence I am defining it in the double quote and with a semicolon. Okay, so here console.log. Okay, console.log employee name. I was just printing it up. Okay, I was just printing it up. And then the next thing here is we need to define a number. So var EMP ID. So EMP ID is a number basically, var 101. I have defined it. And of course, var EMP salary is equal to, probably I was just defining a 5000.99. Okay, 5000.99. So here even this is of a number, this is of a number. Both are numbers. We have seen that particular number type also. You can define a normal value and also you can define a decimal value also into that. Okay, so another thing is, so consider that any number divided by 0 would be an infinite, right? So what I am doing here is var number check is equal to 100 divided by 0. Console.number check. So let us see what it's gonna print out. And of course, the same way, if it is a negative number, so instead of 100, if it is a minus 100, what it's gonna happen? And again, so here this time I'm naming it as a var number check 1. Okay, and the same way I'm defining it as a number check 2. Consider that if I am defining a variable which is a string with a number, how it's gonna work out. Okay, this is the another type basically. Okay, this is a special type that it is being supported. Let us see how this is gonna work once it got executed. And a boolean, so where I can say employee logged in. Okay, so employee logged in is equal to whether he logged in or not, just a true or a false would be added here. Okay, just a true or a false should be added here. Where employee resigned. Okay, so where employee resigned. So in this situation, I'm not defining any value for that. In such situations, when you run it, right, when you execute the program, it should print as an undefined. Okay, and last, where employee designation is equal to, I'm defining it as a null basically. Okay, you can define it as a null. Okay, perfectly all right. So I have defined all these information. Let me try to run this particular program and check it out whether it is printing or not. The name, the ID, the number is a decimal value. When you try to print a number that it is divided by 0, it's coming as an infinity. When you try to print a negative number, it's coming as an infinity. And when you try to divide a ABC by 3, it's coming as a nan, which is a not a number basically. And that's a true and it's an undefined. If you look at it, basically, you haven't defined the employee resignation status, hence it is an undefined. And the null value is also be printed down to the console. Okay, a null value would also be printed down to the console. Okay, perfectly all right. And here one more small thing that we need to consider here is, okay, so let me close this up. Let me close this up. And the another thing that we can do here is you have a type of operator using which you can get the type of that particular variable. Okay, the data type of that particular variable. So let me put a star here so that I can see the difference out over there. So console dot log, and here I'm defining the type of the EMP name. What is the type of an EMP name? So I have just defined the type of all these things. Okay, the type of all these things. So now let me try to run this program and just check it out in the console. Okay, and check it out in the console. See, basically, I think I forgot to save the program. Let me save the program. let me save the program and let me run this program. And if you look at it, basically it's generating these values, and see here, whatever the data type is there, it's being printing down that particular data type for each and every okay, for each and every variable that you have defined. And if you look at my code, guys, a kind of a question that comes in our mind, Surendra, for the previous lines you have added a semicolon, but for the recent lines, right, you haven't added any semicolon. So there is a small confusion out over there. So right, so the answer is, ideally, as part of a best practice, we will be putting a semicolon at the end. It's not mandatory. If you look at the program, this does has a semicolon, this doesn't has a semicolon, it's executing successfully. But for a standards, right, just put a semicolon at the end of every program. Okay, put a semicolon at the end of the every console.log. Okay, just add a semicolon at the end of every line. Okay, so that's it. I just added this console.log and I saved my program. That's it. Perfectly all right. See you again in the next session with the next example. Thank you.